Hey, everybody, welcome back to the This Week in Coworking podcast. This week, we're going to dive into a bunch of interesting news ranging across tech, talking a little bit about AI in case you've heard about AI too much this week. We're going to look at kind of new moves from folks opening locations in London and a UK space who's really understood what goes into a good co-working website. Let's jump in.
Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights. Here are your hosts, Hector Colonas and Mike LaRosa.
Mike, how are you doing?
I'm great. Another week. I'm glad to be back. Episode last week sounded awesome, but it was nice to kind of get back in the mix and catch up on some co-working news. I'm fueled with enough pixie dust to last me until my next trip, which is only 3 weeks away. So, without further ado, and speaking of magic, as you mentioned with all this AI talk, if you all aren't tired of AI, then good news. If you are, then apologies, or should I say, sorry, not sorry. AI is like magic. We're finding all these different ways that it's being incorporated into business processes. And on the heels of all that big news earlier this month, there's some really great articles. So I think we should dive into kind of all this different news. We've got a couple announcements, we've got some good thought pieces, and just overall updates that everyone should know. First on our list is LiquidSpace that has a new Team Connect feature. And so what they're offering is their enterprise platform users can have AI now help connect people and tell them to tee them up for different meetings. It's identical function to what Cadence offers, which is also a partner of theirs. So that's very interesting. Next up, Hector, you probably know a little bit better. Why don't you talk about the Nexus update?
Sure. So the next three tech updates that we saw this week are actually pretty closely connected. As you said, they all touch a little bit on AI, but the others actually mention AI within them. What we saw was three very different posts. One from Elliot Gold over at WorkLife, exploring kind of the different ways that co-working spaces like theirs are optimizing and improving business processes through the use of AI or machine learning, etc. The piece goes into like how you manage leads, how you're improving the customer experience, optimizing your pricing. So this is all using like past data to do predictive analysis and do forward-looking processes. We saw another piece or a video from Francesco over at Unity where he asked OpenAI's new operator bot to find and book me a meeting room near, where was it, Times Square or Grand Central
Yeah.
in New York, and then just recorded how the bot tried to do that. Now we'll come back to that in a second. But the third was also about how Nexudus is using the same kind of predictive grouped benchmark data to help operators decide how and when and why to message different cohorts of their members. So three very different kind of groups of use of AI, one being predictive, the other one doing kind of messaging, and the other one looking at
Yeah.
how bots and agents are going to interact with what we traditionally built for humans, right? Goes back to a conversation we had a few weeks ago. Look back in the podcast feed if you want to listen to that, us rambling about AI several times now. But I've got deep thoughts about all of them. The reason why is we are actually building an undercurrents here at the This Week in Co-working. Undercurrents, if you don't know, are our deep dive studies into kind of emerging trends that we think have the potential to either grow or disrupt the way we run our businesses. And so one of the topics that we're looking into is AI agents and how it's the evolution of what we originally thought of as predictive analysis using AI to now how can AI do things for us, our members, our teams. So all really interesting topics. Happy to dig into any of them. Mike, what were your thoughts on the three AI leaning
Yeah.
topics?
It's here, it's happening. I think that's a lot of the talk this week is that it possibly is a bubble, or there's all this other type of competitive edge now from abroad with far lower cost. I think that this is all overall good for business operators and business owners in the industry because it just means that prices will be driving down, right? It was only a few weeks ago that we were commiserating, you and I, that I was up to $60 a month in subscriptions and how I'm using different AI services for different functionalities. I really have to hand it to Francesco at Unity. Some of the content he's putting out is really insightful. It was very cool to see how a bot would handle booking a space. And for those of you that don't follow him on LinkedIn, the video you can click through on the newsletter or on the website, it literally decided what website it was going to go to. It went to Industrious first, which tells you, okay, is that because Industrious has higher SEO? Is that because Industrious has better reviews? It could be making that decision on a wide variety of information. And then watching it go through being able to not book on Industrious, which is also very insightful. And so it's okay, then that's a lost sale. So then it goes to another website that there are so many aggregators out there. Yes, believe it or not, sometimes we don't know of them or haven't heard of them. And I will totally admit that this coworkaholic had never heard of the aggregator that they went to. And then it continued to go through down that route. A lot of takeaways. This is a great tool for operators to test how functional their own website is. You don't have to pay for a UX consultant anymore. This is a great takeaway for aggregators out there to gird your loins and get ready because this is the future. So that was exciting overall from an industry standpoint. That's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. I think I've said it a few times on the podcast. I've said it definitely to our customers over at Syncaroo. The future is ideally or predominantly going to be interfaceless. People are going to interact with your space and your systems without actually looking at the screen through which you thought you were building.
Yep.
And so this is just one example, a very early example of what that looks like. But I can't see a future where the next generation of workers opens up an app, searches for a space,
It's it's not
looks at a
it's not
picture.
it's not happening. It's
It's
just
just I
not
can't,
happening.
yeah, I can't see that as being the way people interact in the future with technology, especially around physical space, especially on the go. There are there's so many comparisons between an Uber and Uber for co-working, but no one really looks a little bit deeper as to how does Uber choose who to match you with? Which driver? Where are they
Yeah,
going? What are they doing next? And I think that's the big piece that a lot of the aggregators in our industry have forgotten is it's not just about
yeah,
listing things on a screen. It's about making it part of a process, making it part of a thing and taking the hard part of matching who picks you up
yeah,
and automating that away. So it's going to be very interesting. We are seeing a lot of moves, a lot of the aggregators becoming API driven, a lot of them becoming interfaceless, becoming headless, as we call them in the industry, and really just focus on facilitating the booking mechanism, which is going to be an interesting adaptation and very interesting to see how they're going to change how they explain what they do to
yeah,
operators who maybe haven't seen that future yet, right? We've all been there in the industry. We've all launched things that were way too early, way too soon. And people are like, why do we need this? And then 3 years later, like everyone's like, why doesn't anybody do this
yeah.
one thing? So we've been there. We know it. This is going to be like a big shift. And it's something that the reason why we're doing the undercurrents is we're looking at the emerging trends. Here on the newsletter and the podcast, we talk about what's happening right now. In undercurrents, we look at a year from now, 5 years from now, what could the industry look like that maybe if you sleep on it, everyone else is going to eat your breakfast? So that's one thing that talking about the news that you mentioned, the big disruption created all the chaos in the stock market this week. It's going to be obvious that these backbones are going to become cheaper. They have to become cheaper to create more innovation, to create more people to build on it. And I'm just laughing because I was reading some posts that aged like milk, where folks were like, these companies are building industry specific wrappers for ChatGPT. And everyone's like, there's no business model, there's no moat. But they built an experience, they built a relationship with customers, they built a value add to a customer. And now they can just wrap the Chinese API or LLM instead of the expensive American one, providing a better value at a lower cost for the operators. So it's going to be a really interesting shift. I don't think it's bad news for everyone. I think competition is great. I think we need to see more innovation. We need to see cheaper costs of doing business for the AI companies so that all of us can bring AI into our daily life. I'm not sure if you remember the mobile revolution, those big Samsung flip things. They were like a couple $1,000s each, right? Back then, which is like $10,000 now. Now everybody has a phone. I'm recording this now on a phone because it's easier than recording it with a camera. So yeah, it's going to be that logical step of evolution. I think this is going to be open up so much more opportunity for people who are AI curious to see how they can use it and how they can bring it into their business.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And talking about competition and finding ways to lower your costs, our next story is a brand opening up yet another location right? And it's a massive global brand. IKEA, that you would never have thought of, is now up to four, coming on to five co-working spaces. Is in all different industries are getting into this business. It is going to become more competitive. I'm obsessed with this. I think IKEA is such a global brand that so many people connect with, literally and figuratively. You think about how many people sleep in IKEA beds or whatnot. So it really is fascinating to see that they've gotten into this primarily in Europe. There is one location in San Francisco. They've really been getting creative with their real estate. They've
Mhm.
also opened up these little micro showrooms just for their kitchen design. So you don't have to schlep all the way to a massive IKEA store. It's much more convenient and closer to where people live. They can go in there. So I think we wanted to mention this up. There's a couple of spaces that are opening. I think also another opening, it's a nice homecoming. Berlin's very own Beta House is opening up another location in its hometown, this time through a management agreement. Any thoughts on some of these openings, Hector?
I love the fact that management agreements, even in Europe, are predominantly becoming more and more the norm. It's becoming a good way for landlords to partner with operators. We discussed it a couple of weeks back, where every country has different rules about what you can and can't do with regards to real estate. So seeing this in Berlin is a good sign for the local market there. I'm very happy to see a Beta House coming back to where they started and launching a bigger, better space there. Going back to the IKEA side, it's just I'm fascinated with the company. I'm not sure. I think I mentioned it the last time we spoke about IKEA, where there's another podcast called Acquired, and they did a 3-hour deep dive into the business of IKEA and the fact that it's privately held. No one knows how much money it makes. It is run by a foundation that's funded the foundation, and the foundation's only objective is to keep IKEA alive. It's a fascinating business, but I do love the fact that either A, they've identified this as a huge growing opportunity, which they're pretty good at, as you've seen everything they've done and been successful so far, which is great for everyone in co-working. But on the flip side, I think they're also completely understanding that there's a demographic of people who will graduate from co-working spaces. And if you can have them live in a showroom of your products when they launch a new office. And we've seen this tried time and time again from the big kind of office furniture companies trying to give furniture to co-working spaces, trying to do showrooms and partnerships and things like that. So maybe this is part of their long-term strategy to move more out of just the home and kitchen and that stuff, and also start supplying more into the office space and growing their own future generation of enterprise customers. So a very interesting play. I just said there's 4 or 5 of them now. They're called Hey Workspace or Hey Workshop, I think they're called. Hey
A
Workshop.
workshop.
They are all in partnership with local operators, which is fantastic. They're not trying to grow that in-house. They are partnering with white label or local operators. So really good to see this rolling out and see where it's going to land. I'm bullish on it, but it's going to be curious. I'm curious to see if it's that lead generation thing or they actually see this as a growing market or both.
Yeah, I can't get into specifics, but I know that they were most definitely looking for monetization strategies with aggregators, that's for sure. And I'm glad that you brought up that um, little factoid, is that I almost forgot for a second that it is the local operators. That is also what's really unique, is that it's very Nordic mindset of them, that they're coming into a specific market. They're going to have a market operator that's familiar with the ins and outs to lead the charge with,
Mhm.
the brand and the money behind them. Yeah, and I need to check one out. I haven't been to San Francisco in a long time. I'm long overdue, or maybe abroad, because
Mhm.
they do look beautiful. They're
Yeah.
living showrooms, which is no different than what restoration hardware's been doing. It's cool to see them get on that bandwagon and see who else may follow. Next up, you found a really cool story about a new website for co-working space, but here's the twist, it was designed by community members. Hector, take it away.
Yes, we've seen a lot of co-working spaces rebrand, relaunch over the last couple of months, especially going into the new year. I think we're going to see even more. When we saw Space Made launch a new brand, we saw some other companies relaunch or re-update their brand. I think Patch did a similar job in the UK. But what's interesting here is not only did they use a member to build the space and another member to write their copy, but they actually gave them free reign to explain and show why they joined the space, what drew them to the space that maybe wasn't being explained before they moved in. And I love this because if you do go look at the websites over in the newsletter under the residents, you'll see that the normal mistakes have all been removed. So normally you go to a great co-working space, it's a new co-working space, maybe they've been around a couple of years, empty floor plan, beautiful furniture, plants, but you see no people. You don't know who you're going to be interacting with on a day-to-day basis. And the first thing that hit me when I looked at the new website was their smiling faces. The owner was front and center. They hold the community together. There was live, vibrant kind of feedback or testimonials, short testimonials about why people are loving this community. And the space is in Bishop Stopford, which is like a little region nearish to London. So it's not like it's a city center location where people can just walk in and discover it. You have to create a destination. You have to create a reason for people to divert towards you in these locations. I think it's going to be a really interesting shift over the next couple of months as more rural co-working spaces or suburban co-working spaces really have to fight for that attention by putting the benefits and the value first, not the features. Like no one comes looking for renting a desk, right? Not anymore. They're looking for that community. They're looking for that benefit. They're looking for that no commuting into the city, looking for the fast Wi-Fi, but they're not signing up because they want a hot desk or they want a co-working membership. So it's really interesting to see that play off nicely. And the fact that the members put it out there is just a really good example of maybe you should be asking your members to be more involved with your rebrands.
I'm so glad that you chose this one to talk about because actually we've got some extra time today. We've been moving pretty quickly. I realized I'd be remiss if we didn't mention that post from Jake at Coworking SEO
Mm-hmm.
because that told me that once again, reading This Week in Coworking, I'm seeing kind of a trend line here, right? So how coincidental is it that the same week we've got a co-working space that's members have redone its website, it's the same week that an SEO expert is talking about how you have to avoid these generic AI co-working descriptions, which a lot of co-working spaces have, right? Because everything is collaboration, workspace, meeting room, like very generic.
Yep.
But yeah, he has some really great tips in here. It was really insightful to see like these trends map what this co-working space is exhibiting, right? That it's being authentic. You need to there he's talking about how pages are doing better if they're talking about their neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
right? Neighborhood vibes can always best describe what a community space might be like. Also, if you have multiple locations to avoid some of that duplication and copy, where every space has meeting room or coffee or this, Google's starting to think that's duplicate. How do you identify them? It just clicked, Hector. It's very just ironic how that is some similarities there, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember Alex Hillman, the OG of OGs, saying years ago, stop posting photos of the furniture, right? Like, where are the people?
Yep.
And it's very true.
Yep, absolutely. So it's really also tricky for folks who are starting new spaces. We're seeing so many co-working spaces launch and they go and they look at some of the more previously successful websites. And then you have this kind of spill out effect. If you make a
Yeah.
photocopy of a photocopy of a
Oh,
photocopy, it's going to be
exactly, exactly.
ineligible at the end. And so that's the
Yeah.
one thing. The other is on the SEO topic. I've been watching this for a little bit of a while now, for the last maybe 15 months. For previous SEO world, what you put into your description is what showed up on Google. What you put in
Yeah.
your title is what showed up on Google. For the last 18-ish months, Google has been changing what the listing says based on who's searching. So if I'm
Mm.
searching to book meeting rooms near me, the listing will show your website if you've got good SEO, but it'll also tell me in the descriptions, book meeting rooms from X amount, regardless of whether I put that in the description. So what goes into the actual page is just as important as what goes, or if not more important than what
Yeah.
you put in your description. And that is a big shift in SEO. For a long time, folks were like the description, the keywords, backlinks, that's what
Oh
makes
my
you.
gosh. How many workshops have I sat in
Oh yeah.
about, but it made sense. And I can rag on DeskPass or brag on them that there was a reason why at the bottom of their page on their blog, it was deskpass.com/Austin or Boston or Chicago, because then they owned the SEO for co-working Chicago, whatever. It makes sense, right? Not to interrupt you.
Yeah. So that was definitely the trends. And there was a lot of dark trends. People used to do that, but make the font in white on a white background. So
Yep.
only the bots would see it. And so there was a lot of what kind of tricks to boost SEO. But the fact that AI is coming now into the play of how people find things and how people search and how people research and how they find options, going back to the example with the OpenAI operator, it the rules are changing, the game is changing, and you have to figure out not only your SEO strategy, but your AI EO. What is your artificial intelligence engine optimization strategy? Like, you have to figure out how are these things going to find you? How are they going to show you? How are they going to if you are, it's the same as thinking about aggregators. Maybe this is helpful for operators to think about. When you're on an aggregator, some of them show who your brand is, some of them don't, some of them just put your pricing. So you got to think about, if the end user never lands on your website, what information can you put there that makes your space ring true as the right space for them? And it sounds complex. It sounds like something that's stressful, but so was listing on search engines about 10 years ago. So it's just the next evolution. I think it's going to be really interesting for all of us to see, what is the future of interacting with our spaces going to look like, so that when they walk through the door, you are in a good position, they're in a good position to know that you're a good fit for each other. I think that's going to be really interesting, because if you remove all the search part, which is the exhausting part about finding a co-working space, and it's more about walking in and being confident that this is the right space for me, I think that's going to lead to huge growth for our industry.
Look at that, Hector. I think we're getting pretty good at this podcasting because we did full circle in under 25 minutes. So, once again, another week of awesome recaps and insights about what's happening in the world of co working in a nice little convenient podcast form. You can just pop it and go, whether you're in the car, working out, or just sitting at home like I am. I'm overdue for a co-working space. It's been a couple of weeks. But anyway, I hope you have a great rest of your week, Hector. I know I'm looking forward to doing this once again. Do you have anything for us before we wrap it up?
No, I just want to say it's great to have you back, Mike. We missed you last week. Good to have you back this week. Always fun to geek out about the news with you. If you are listening and you have feedback, or you agree or disagree with anything we've said, drop a comment wherever you're listening to this. Find us on LinkedIn or email us at podcast@thisweekincoworking.com. We're always here to interact with you and to make sure that these podcasts are a resource for you and something that adds to your day, as opposed to maybe just distract you from the AI news.